Let's take a moment of reflection and prayer. So I will read from Psalm 19. The law of the Lord is perfect, refreshing the soul. The statutes of the Lord are trustworthy, making wise the simple. The precepts of the Lord are right, giving joy to the heart. The commands of the Lord are radiant, giving light to the eyes. The fear of the Lord is pure, enduring forever. The decrees of the Lord are firm, and all of them are righteous. They are more righteous than gold, than much pure gold. They are sweeter than honey from the comb. By them your servant is warned. In keeping them there is great reward. But who can discern their own errors? Forgive my hidden faults then. Keep your servant also from willful sins. May they not rule over me. Then I will be blameless, innocent of the great transgression. May these words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, my Lord, my rock, and my Redeemer. Amen. That's literally the end of that psalm. I know you probably hear a lot of pastors say that. That's literally the end of Psalm 19. So it's a great place to start, because I got a call about this, and Bob says, you have 10 minutes, and we got to talk, and he says, yeah, productivity, and that's great. Go ahead and do that, whatever it is. And that's that. And I was like, you got any more for me there, pal? And he says, no, you'll figure it out. So here we are. I am the pastor right now at St. Peter Lutheran Church in Elgin, Texas. And if many of you may not know this, but Elgin is famous for one thing other than sausage. Sausage. Elgin makes brick. That's what Elgin does. So if you have a house in central Texas or something that has a brick edifice, more than likely somebody from my church drove that brick out to your place to have your house built. And that is actually really poignant, because today I'm going to start with the Exodus. And I say that because I like to talk about Pharaoh a lot. And Pharaoh had, who wants to be the guy on top? Nobody. I don't want to be the guy on top. Everybody's trying to come at you. Everybody always wants something. Everybody needs something, and you're always trying to fix things. And so there's this Pharaoh, this king. And this Pharaoh has a memory of a famine that lasted for 7 years. A drought, if you will, that lasted for 7 years. Texas knows about drought that lasts that long. And so this king inherited this anxiety from his predecessors about the necessity for food, because if you don't have food, you don't have people, and if you don't have people, you don't have a kingdom, and if you don't have a kingdom, what's the point? Nothing exists. So he had this anxiety and this restlessness, and so he gave out production managers, taskmasters, to rule over the people and to make sure that they were keeping up their brick quotas. And the more they produced, the more he wanted, because the more they produced, the more anxious he got, and the more anxious he got because he was afraid that there wasn't enough. There just wasn't enough. And it was a God of scarcity that he followed. And so the people and the Pharaoh were all weary. They were all weary. And along comes this guy who can't even keep his tongue from being tied. And he says, let my people go. And he probably stammered that out as well. And he says, no, I'm not going to do that. They're my labor. I need my labor. Wars have been fought over free labor. Labor is important. They are my labor, and I don't care how miserable they are, I'm going to keep them. And I don't care what you say. And he says, well, you asked for it, and so you know the rest. But what Moses brings with him is a God of creation. The God who created all things. And here's the neat thing about the God who created all things. The God who created all things did it and then took a step back and rested. Didn't come back in and say, "Ooh, sorry, the oak trees aren't making enough acorns this year. I'll make them do it a little bit more. Sorry, it's not raining over Texas. I'll make it rain a little bit more." No, the Lord of creation made it happen, took a step back, and rested and let it go. Because the God of creation created a perfect place for us to live, a perfect place for us to live in a garden. Isn't that interesting? So we have the 6 days, and then you have the Sabbath day, and then there's this other alternate creation scheme that has a garden with talking snakes and stuff like that. That's kind of fun. But it tells you something, that what this place is supposed to be for us. Hey, it's a gift that's been given by the Lord himself, and we are here to care for it. So don't worry, I'm going to go further. So that is what Moses brings with him. And Moses brings them out of Egypt, and he goes up on that mountain. And in a moment of amazing beauty, he receives the 10. I'm sure he received more than that. But we get the 10, right? And that's all Charlton Heston said. And so God spoke all these words. "I am the Lord your God. I brought you out of the house of slavery." The very first image of God is a creator who saves people and takes them away, but always reminds them about where they came from. You were once slaves. You were once slaves. Never forget that. In fact, never forget it so much that I'm going to keep reminding you over and over again that you were once slaves. Because all through the Old Testament it keeps saying, do these things because you were once slaves. You remember that? And so he says, don't make a graven image of yourself, because that's what Pharaoh did. Pharaoh made an image of commodity, a god of commodity, and treated everyone like they were also commodities to be used and traded and all of those things. And is it any wonder that when they got scared, the first thing they did was take raw material, the finest you could provide, and produced an image of commodity, a golden calf. It makes perfect sense. They went all the way back to Egypt. Every church, I'm told, has a Let's Go Back to Egypt committee, because we don't like going forward because it's scary. So Karl Marx actually called it commodity fetishism. Commodity fetishism. And that's kind of interesting. But I'm not up here going to profess Karl Marx for you. But the dangers of a commodity religion were brought forth in this idea. And the commodity religion is the commodity of idols that keeps us from living into the true identity of our Creator, which we are given in our baptism for free. Right? You shall not make yourself a graven image. And then there's a long reason for that I'm not going to get into. It takes a long time to explain why the second commandment is what it is. You might think it's important. A lot of ink spilled on that one. Third, don't misuse the name of the Lord your God. Well, that was pretty short, actually. And fourth, remember the Sabbath day. And here's another one. Takes a lot of ink to describe what the Sabbath day is, why it's there, and why the Lord wanted it for the people. So something I want to mention about Elgin is that they make bricks. Did I say that already? You see how interesting and paradoxical, how strange that is, how that works out, those serendipitous little things. People in Egypt making bricks, you don't get enough hay, call it right sizing. Right? I want you to produce more. I'm not going to give you as much of what you need. So I'm going to make you right size everything. So bring your own stuff and make your bricks, and you have to make that many or more. And when they do, they bring more. And he says, nope, that's great. You brought that much. Start bringing a little bit more and more and more. It's the very image of our commodity economy that we have today. This is nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. And one of the things I've learned about that, one of the results is Elgin has more combat veterans than I have seen anywhere in my 20 years of ministry. I've been a lot of places, a lot. Elgin has a lot of combat veterans and its share of combat deaths as well. Why? Why? Because the smart people know how to keep their kids out of combat. And the people who are trustworthy and loyal will go and they will fight and they will do anything they're told to do. They're incredible people. It's incredible. So Moses wanted them to know that they belonged to God and no one else, and that there was to be no other images which they were going to worship, because they were made in the image of God. And the primary way that these people were going to be able to show that the Lord is the Lord of creation was that one thing that made them stick out from all the others, and those were Sabbath laws. Sabbath laws. And all of these ideals of Sabbath, everybody gets a day off. That is not something that existed for any of Pharaoh's people. Everybody, including the stranger in your midst, the alien in your land, and then you go on further and further. You're not going to take any money from these people. You're not going to loan with interest. Imagine that. Usury is illegal in the Bible, and yet it is the very foundation of our market economy. So, okay, everybody wonder what systematic sin looks like. There it is. And so, Jesus comes along. I'm moving way into the future here. And he becomes the Sabbath walking. The Sabbath walking on legs. And probably the greatest thing that he says in this particular regard is when he says in Matthew chapter 11, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and you will learn from me, for I am gentle and humble of heart, and you will find rest for your souls." It is also, where I currently serve, that this is the most difficult thing for anyone to get. It is so difficult for the blue-collar employees of brick foundries to understand that the Lord is there for their rest and not more productivity. The Lord is there to forgive them and to embrace them and to love them, and not expecting more productivity as if you're going to somehow garner more love from God. And so, why do I bring this to the men in mission? Why do I bring this to the men in mission? And the main reason is because in our culture there is an unfortunate, there's a divorce from sanity, if you will, as the image of masculinity is somehow broken. And that as masculine people, men who have this thing that's called masculinity, we are expected certain things. We are expected to produce. And I'll tell you how powerful that is. It's so powerful, that expectation of productivity, that I have seen entire lives destroyed. I've seen people die because of it. It has killed people. I watched a man spend his entire life producing and became the greatest success, one of the greatest successes I've ever known, only to retire into the good life and to bring out a bottle of vodka and drink himself to death. What do we do if we do not produce? What is our identity if we are not simply people who are product slaves of Pharaoh? I keep pointing to I-35. I don't know why I do that. I-35, that is the problem. What we do as Christians and what we do as leaders, whether you're a lay leader or a pastoral leader, is that we help people understand that a life in Jesus Christ is a reframing of identity from the ground up. Every atom in your body is a new creation, and everything that we do is not to create more stuff, because we love stuff. We have commodity fetish. I keep going back to that great word, commodity fetish. If I have more stuff when I die, I win. No, you don't. You're going to give it to your kids, and they're going to wonder, what in the heck do I do with this stuff? I don't want it. Well, that belonged to your great-great-great-great-great-grandmother, or something like that. Well, great, she can have it back. Fantastic. Masculinity is, for us, has been kind of ruined and twisted. And so we have to reissue a definition of that. We have to reissue a definition of what it means to be a man, what it means to be male in this world. And an image of Christ is, I think, the perfect image of what it is to be a person in this world. Whatever masculinity is, you can have that stuff. But whatever Christ brings, now that is what it's all about. We are to be healers. We are called to serve the last, the least, and the lost, and to bring dignity into the world, specifically to the people that no one else likes, to the illegals, to the immigrant, to the alcoholic on the street, to the family that is destroyed by violence. We are to be people of healing, because Christ was a person of healing. And so I'm going to leave you with an image. Years ago, I met a man. His name was David. And I watched David get sober. And he moved into a halfway house. And he kept on getting better. And he kept on working steps through a 12-step program. He kept on doing his thing. And he became a dear, dear friend of mine. I watched him get both hips replaced. He wobbled around on his little thing for a while, and both hips got replaced. And then I watched him go to college. I watched this man go to college. And when I was his roommate for a while, actually, and I was talking about, hey, I'm going to go party on Guadalupe. Yeah, I was like, yeah, I used to live on Guadalupe. And it's like, really? What apartment were you in? And he said, no, I lived on Guadalupe. I lived on the sidewalk on Guadalupe. And that's where I threw my teeth at somebody when they pissed me off. And I lost my teeth for a few months. That's what they do. So I watched this man get sober. I watched him get well. We work together. We become roommates. We become the greatest of friends. 20 plus years of sobriety and freedom and joy. Not because he produced something as an LVN, but because he was simply a person who became something that God wanted him to be. His family connections were restored. I found out he had been an orphan, adopted by this family. I didn't know that before. But his dignity was restored. And he started following a God that was anti-anxiety, living one day at a time without restlessness, without anger, and without fear, because this is the God that we follow. This is where God calls us to be. And I watched the man die, because nobody's liver can go through all of that trauma and just make it too much further. But he lived well, and he became a human being of the greatest variety. And my friend David, among all the saints, singing with all of the saints today, is an image of where we are to be and who we are to serve as Christians. Amen.